Hello everyone and welcome to the first ever CXI Masterclass. My name is Vlad Demsa. I'm a marketing lecturer at Swinburne University and co-director of the CXI Research Group. I'm going to be your host for this session. So this session is the first in an ongoing series of free and publicly accessible online masterclasses, which we're launching as part of a broader portfolio of education, research, and consulting services provided by CXI Research Group. So looking through the list of attendees that we have for this workshop today, we've got a diverse range of industry professionals, academics, and students, both domestically and internationally, who are joining us, which is fantastic to see. The topic for this session will be brand management success over time, and our keynote speaker for the session will be Andy Gibson, who I'm going to introduce to you in a moment. So the format of the session today will include a short introduction by me. I'll then hand over to Andy for his presentation, and then we'll open up for questions and discussion at the end. So throughout the session, if you think of any questions or would like to that you would like to ask, or you want to contribute to the discussion in any way, or any thoughts to share, just pop them in the chat and we'll relay them to Andy during the discussion time to get his thoughts. Before we kick off, I'd like to respectfully acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, who are the traditional owners of the land on which Swinburne's Australian campuses are located in Melbourne's East and Outer East, and pay our respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. So being our first ever CXI Masterclass, before I introduce our keynote speaker for the session, I wanted to spend a couple of minutes on CXI Research Group so that we all have a good idea of who we are and what we do. The CXI Research Group, or the Customer Experience and Insights Research Group at Swinburne, was formed around 8 years ago, and our mission is to advance knowledge and practice in the field of customer experience at the nexus of customer insights and technology. The group is led by Associate Professor Carla Ferraro and myself, and we work closely with a team of scholarly researchers, industry professionals, and other associates to deliver a suite of education, research, and insights consulting services. And we sort of have 5 broad areas of expertise across the entire group. It includes customer and employee experience, brand identity and health, advertising effectiveness, product and service innovation, as well as consumer and digital cultures. And our activities fall broadly into sort of 3 buckets, and within each of those buckets, we run a number of different initiatives throughout the year. So the first bucket is our free and publicly accessible content, and this includes publishing digestible versions of academic research articles, online masterclasses like this one, our quarterly email newsletter, a CX Trends report, which we release annually, and our annual industry networking night. The second bucket includes our education and research programs, and specifically this includes our executive education suite, and we'll be developing an executive education program off the back of this workshop, also focused on brand management. And these workshops tend to be sort of 1 to 3 day programs, which are quite intensive and are designed for industry professionals. We also have the annual Strategic Planning and Management in Retailing, or SPMR program. And we are also launching a new retail customer experience tracker, which is going to be an ongoing market research program tracking the performance of Australia's top retailers. And we'll be launching that one in 2024. And the final bucket is made up of our bespoke research and insights consulting work, where we work closely with clients to help them understand, measure, and design various aspects of their customer experience and solve all kinds of different marketing challenges. If you're interested in what we do, there are 3 sort of quite easy ways and low effort ways to get involved in our activities. You can sign up to our newsletter, which contains the latest CX trends and insights, and it's sent out quarterly, and we promise not to spam you. You can also follow our LinkedIn page, which now has over 10,000 followers, people who are genuinely interested in talking and discussing all aspects of customer experience. And this is also where we post our content and updates regularly. Or if you'd like to chat to us directly about our education, research, or consulting services, just send us an email anytime, and I've got the email there for you on the screen. So without further delay, I'd like to introduce you to our keynote speaker, Andy Gibson, who is founder of The Edge. Andy is a seasoned professional with over 30 years of global marketing experience. His extensive and very impressive career includes roles such as Chief Marketing Officer at Walgreens Boots Alliance, Chief Marketing Officer and President at Bacardi Global Brands, Chief Marketing Officer at Carlton United Breweries, and he's also held various global marketing, innovation, and general management positions at Diageo, and has lived and worked in multiple countries, including Australia, Brazil, Mexico, the US, Singapore, Germany, and the UK. Andy's expertise spans across FMCG, quick service restaurants, beverages, healthcare, beauty, retail, the list goes on. And his journey is quite reflective of his dedication and passion for transforming businesses and brands on a global scale. We're very lucky to have Andy joining us. So Andy, over to you.
Thank you, Vlad. Thanks for the very generous introduction, and good afternoon, everyone. Greetings. And it's a pleasure to actually be in partnership with CXI, who obviously are all about insight and understanding consumers and customers, and sharing some of our experience with you all around the often and regularly tricky subject of managing brands through time. I'm going to split this presentation up really into three sort of units. One, a little bit of theory, and I promise I'm not going to drain that. I'm going to go through that as quickly as I can, but that's just to get us all on a common page about some references and some definitions, like what is a brand. And then I'm going to share a real life case study just to really demonstrate the trickiness and the power of managing a brand through time. And I'm going to share a brand's journey over about 30 odd years. And hopefully that's going to be engaging, and you're going to learn quite a bit as we go through that. And then the third part of the presentation is an opportunity to do some Q&A. So if that sounds good, without further ado, let's get into it. And I'm going to start with a little bit of the theory. And our conviction over the years that we've learned is that the secret to success is not just brand. It's about brand. It's about finding that brand's competitive, distinctive edge that's differentiated from your competitors, is true from your brand, and is engaging to your target consumer. And once you know that, it's all about driving that competitive edge across all touch points, not just a couple. A brand needs to be coherent. So everything you do has to be driven by that competitive edge. And we call that competitive edge brand positioning. The other thing that we believe and we've learned over the years is that brand building is a total company job. It's not just the marketeers who need to be aware of and responsible for brand building. And I'm a marketeer. I am, but I say often brand building's too important to be left just to the marketing team. And that's because every part of your story matters. Every person in every function matter. Every consumer experience, every time someone interacts with your brand, that interaction has the potential to either add to, build, or detract, drain equity from your brand. And probably the ongoing effect of that is that you'll start to lose business. And an example of that is if you go into Starbucks, if you this morning see Starbucks as an example, the coffee shop advertising they are the world's greatest coffee connoisseurs, and you go, oh, I might stop in and get a great cup of coffee, and there's a line out the door. You order a particular type of coffee and you say that your name is Mark with a C. 15 minutes later, you get the coffee, it's cold, and they say coffee for Kark. You're not going to believe their advertising. You're actually going to say that experience wasn't very good. And I'm not sure actually that I believe what Starbucks are saying. And so every single element, every person in that case the service people that are actually there providing the experience for you have a real possibility and a real opportunity to positively or negatively impact your brand story. Now, we're talking about brand, so I felt that it was important that we get a definition of what a brand is, just so we can all gather around one thought here. And a brand is not a name, it's not a trademark, it's not a logo, it's not a color. It's not a pack or a product or a service. A brand is actually a manifestation of a world that your target audience, your consumers want to be associated with, want to be badged with. You know, I'm going to do a vodka case study just shortly. And we chose vodka because it's interesting. The definition of vodka is odorless, colorless, tasteless ethanol. And so really, we should all just be walking around with little bags of vodka, but we don't. Some people right now in Australia are paying $80 a bottle for Grey Goose versus $30 for Smirnoff. In Las Vegas right now, there's people paying $1,000 for a bottle of Grey Goose. In fact, as we've been talking, there's probably 6 of those being sent to tables. And that's because we want people to associate us with the brands that we associate with. We want to be badged by association. And so in public, when it's a big showy event in Vegas and I'm in the VIP section, I want people to know exactly who I am, and Grey Goose might have the opportunity to do that job. So we've actually got to build this world when we're building brand. We've got to actually build the place emotionally so that our consumers can say, oh, and they don't say this consciously, obviously, but they go, oh, I want to be in that. I actually want to have a part of that world. And once we've done that and people understand our world, we've positioned our brand. And our job when we're positioning that brand is to get the balance right. We need, and this is why brand building is difficult, we need to actually be delivering our commercial objectives that we've set out and promised to our stakeholders, usually on an annual basis, whilst we're building equity of our brand. And when I say equity, what do I mean? I mean those emotional and physical attributes that consumers hold in their hearts and minds about your brand, those thoughts, those feelings. And our job is to deliver on our commitments to the business whilst ensuring that our brand is in better shape today than it was yesterday, and the day after tomorrow, it better be better than it was today. And so we've got to continually be feeding that equity and building that positive emotional commitment to our brand. And that's the balance, and that's hard to do. We can all just go and pull a lever of price, and that might get us the sales for this year. But what is it doing? What's it doing to the thoughts and feelings that your consumer has in their hearts and minds about your brand? You know, I often use Louis Vuitton. You know, you never see a Louis Vuitton, a real Louis Vuitton, I should say, discounted. And that's because at the end of each season, they shred any leftover bags. They don't actually discount and push those bags out on sale. And that's because they want their consumers to love that brand and feel proud when they're walking down the street, showing that badge, that really distinctive badge, to everyone around them to say, hey, do you know I've got a Louis Vuitton? And so every move we make actually has the chance to impact positively or negatively on our brand's equity. I'm just going to share now a slide that's taken us about 25 years to write. And it's a one-page version of brand management. And so we've taken, you know, everything we've learned over the years and said, you know what, this is the distillation of brand management. And there's 4 inputs into brand management. And the first one, and I hope this makes sense, folks, is actually understanding who your core target consumer is. You need to understand them in life. You need to understand who they are as people. And we believe that you target the few, you get really clear on who you're targeting and be everything you possibly can to them in order to actually sell to the many. And our experience tells us you be everything you can to a chosen group, and cohorts that are in adjacencies will actually go, wow, there's something going on over there and I quite like it. That's the first input. Hopefully that makes sense, starting with your target. The second input is knowing what that target thinks of your brand. We call that your brand DNA, your equity, the health of your brand. And it's really important that you understand the positives and the negatives of that DNA, because if you've got gross negatives in your brand, such as too expensive for your target audience, you need to know that. And you need, through your planning, you need to do something about that. And I'm going to show some examples of that when we get into the case study. You then need to know what your goal for growth is. In other words, what's your business objective? What is this brand charged with and have to deliver for the business or the organization that I'm in? And I say that because generally, we're not a charity here. We've actually got some objectives and some goals to hit. And then the last input to managing a brand is an engaging, unique proposition, which is a differentiated, we call it a key brand benefit. Some people call it a brand purpose, a brand promise. We call it the key brand benefit that your brand is going to bring to your target consumer that's differentiated from your competitors. And I've worked in the spirits industry for many years, and I don't mind sharing that over that time, I've probably wasted a little bit too much money, actually, in trying to crack into the bourbon category in Australia by trying to just out Jack Daniels and out Jim Beam, as opposed to finding a unique adjacent position that I could actually own, authentically own, and build something that's quite engaging and different to my consumer. So they're the inputs to brand management. The first thing you do, and this is why I love this partnership with CXI, because this is their area of expertise. The first thing you do is you drive for a consumer insight. That's a big unmet want, need, belief, desire that your target consumer has in their life. It has to be true to them, something they really want so that it's compelling. It has to be something that your brand can actually authentically leverage. There's many insights in life. Can your brand leverage the insight that you're proposing for your brand from a positioning perspective? It has to be an insight that actually has the potential to deliver your business objectives, and it has to be an insight that you can leverage in a unique and compelling way. That's tricky. That's why groups like CXI are super important, actually, I think, to industry, to all of us, because really, really getting under and learning how to actually generate a true, powerful, ownable consumer insight is not easy. It's tricky. But once you crack it, you've cracked it. And the next thing you do there is you drive your key brand benefit off that insight. And so, if your target wants this, your brand can give them that. And it is the answer to that insight. And it's the launch point of your brand into your consumer's life. It's the jump off point. It's the point that weaves your brand into your consumer's life. And folks, once you've got your key brand benefit well defined, you need to continually, through everything you do, hammer that key brand benefit, deliver that key brand benefit. And I say that because consumers don't really care, and I know we all do. We all care about our brands very, very much. But our consumers don't really care. They've got things like family, health, housing, bills. And by the way, health over the last few years has been a big one. Bills, jobs, even Wi-Fi access, that all come before caring about our brand. And so if we're saying something different to them every single time we interact with them, we won't be well positioned in their lives. We've got an opportunity to own just one little bit of a slither of their mind and their heart that is our brand. If we keep saying something different, we're just not going to be able to own that. Then they're going to get confused, and we'll just be another brand out there in the ether. And there's plenty of those. The opportunity to really well position is there for most brands in a lot of categories. We then, once we've got our key brand benefit organized, we actually we generate a core consumer question. And this is a result of many years ago, my boss saying to me, how do you know you can only grow at 10%? I need you to grow at 15%. And I said, because I've only built a plan for 10%. And that old argument was just backwards and forwards. And so what I thought, by the way, my boss's challenge was good. I thought it was very, very good. And I felt like until we solved this, that argument was just going to continue to play out through the years as it's done. And so we came up with this thought of actually articulating our goal for growth in consumer behavior. So the 15% means, for instance, I've got to motivate 500,000 new consumers to consume my brands on 2 occasions a month instead of a competitor, and I'll deliver that business goal. Sort of went, wow, okay, I can get my arms around that now. How do I motivate those 500 people? And the answer to that is we then create what we call an integrated commercial plan, an ICP, which has triggers and barriers. So what are the triggers that are going to help me deliver against that question of 500,000? What are the barriers that are in the way of me delivering that 500,000? Build a plan out of it, get your activities away, measure it. And if you've got your target consumer understanding in the territory of what your brand is all about, and actually you're delivering there or thereabouts on your business objectives, you've got a brand that's in pretty good shape. And once you hit that spot, my view is keep going, just keep dancing, just keep at that, because you've cracked the code of your brand and actually your activities or your growth drivers. If you haven't quite got that coming back off your target, that's fine, because you know what you've done in this process and you can iterate and adjust and tweak. It could be your insights not quite right. It could be actually your core consumer questions not quite right. But because you've been through the process, you have a really cool idea about where you might go to look for those adjustments to your plan. Now, once you've got your brand positioned, powerful brand building integrates all of your activities and delivers, as I said earlier, really, really clearly on your differentiated proposition, and it actually starts to nurture your brand's DNA. And this is really, really important because all of those initiatives have to pay rent back to that brand equity. You can't keep burning the house you can't keep burning the furniture, I beg your pardon, to keep the house warm. So you have to make sure that your activities are feeding and nurturing the core equity of your brand. And there's just a few stats here which we've learned over the years. I used that Starbucks example earlier, and customers, consumers can be really unforgiving. And the stat at the moment is a whopping 42% will stop shopping with you, stop interacting with you after just 2 bad experiences. That could be a service experience. It could be a quality experience. It could be an availability experience. So you haven't got many chances here to actually be true to your brand's proposition and deliver on that for your target audience. Acquiring new customers is really expensive, 5 to 25 times, depending on the category, as much as retaining a current customer. And just increasing retention by just 5% can actually nearly double your profits. And why is that? That's because those retained consumers are really happy with your brand, and they will tell people about your brand. They will continue to use your brand. Hopefully they might increase frequency with your brand, but they become your advocates. And in the world today of social media, reviews, 4 stars, 1 star, 5 stars, those advocates become really important, and word of mouth is a very powerful driver. So we're better off making sure that we know who our target is, know what our brands means for them, and then actually ensuring that everything we do delivers on that key brand benefit. That's the theory. I'm going to run now through a case study, and I'm going to use Smirnoff. I mentioned earlier that I'm going to do a vodka case study. So I'm going to run through a quick Smirnoff case study, and I'm just going to start with a video. And I apologize for the quality of this video. It's many, many years old, but when we're doing a case study about brand management through time, we're going into the archives to find film and activities from many years ago. So I apologize about the quality, but hopefully you'll see that this tells the story of Smirnoff, which is, it was originally Pedrov Smirnov, and they were fine purveyors to the Russian royal court until the Bolshevik Revolution happened, and everyone who was associated with the royal court became an enemy of the state. And so Petrov, he grabbed the recipe for number 21 after being actually put to the death sentence on 4 times with reprieve. And he took off over to France, changed his name to Pierre Smirnov, and the rest is history. I'll just run the movie very quickly.
Our most cherished and long-felt desire.
When we bought the Smirnoff Company, we had no idea as to what we were going to do with it. If Smirnoff was to have a chance of competing with whiskey in America, it had to be as a mixer.
So that's the history of Smirnoff. I thought it was worth just immersing you in that. And there's a couple of points. One, it's the true original authentic Russian vodka as the purveyor to the Russian court. And it's actually played a big role over the years in many countries, and no bigger a role than actually the cocktail revolution here in the US. And as a result of that mixability thought, and cocktails coming into popular culture, Americans do drink more cocktails, more mixed cocktails per capita than any other country. So it's played a big role in its time. I'm going to share now the journey of Smirnoff from the 80s the 90s into the current day. And I'm going to show you some good stuff, and I'm going to show you some stuff that was off the mark. And I just want to say that the stuff that's off the mark, I'm not showing that to be critical. In fact, in some of it, I was involved. So I'm not showing it to be critical. I'm actually showing it for the learning, for us all to go, hey, wow, I can see how that might have happened, but maybe it wasn't the right move. And it's the same with the stuff that was right on brand. And it's quite a journey for Smirnoff. So we're gonna again, I just want to reinforce this point that we're talking about brand building across all touch points that a brand can possibly have to execute across and actually interact with its consumers on. So we're going to use that structure as we go through the case study. And the first thing I want to share is back in the 90s, this was Smirnoff's positioning. And it starts with a consumer insight, that unmet need, want, belief, or desire that exists in Smirnoff's target audience's life. And that's a 21-year-old American. When I'm out with my friends, I always want to be at my social best. That's pretty true. That's a pretty true. It's a bit, but most insights that are true sort of are a bit obvious. And then the DNA of Smirnoff, in other words, the core values, what that brand stands for, are purity, Russianness, and originality. And a brand that stands for that, against that want or need, that insight that the target audience has, actually promises to the consumer, the key brand benefit it brings to life is the purity of Smirnoff helps keep you at your social edge. And then the purpose for Smirnoff at the time, the brand purpose, its reason for existing, was Smirnoff exists to bring out the social best in everyone. So quite a nice tight piece of positioning. This is our brand positioning connector tool, and hopefully you'll see there's a real connectiveness right across all elements of that brand, which means it's a nice, a coherent, tight brand positioning that the brand can actually execute against with confidence. And this is some of the work they did back in the 90s, which I think is brilliant and really brings that brand positioning to life. Nice piece of advertising, and it really worked in the day. I don't think you could run that today, by the way. In fact, I know you couldn't, but in the day it was quite breakthrough and quite a nice piece of work around, you really are a wolf in sheep's clothing. So that's when it was at its best. Then in the late 90s, Smirnoff launches 8 flavors. So sales are starting to get a little tough. So they go into the flavor game and they launch 8 flavors, starting with quite unique, ownable flavors such as citrus, vodka and lime, vodka, lemon, really nice, but they end up with 8 flavors. And then in 1999, Smirnoff Ice is launched. And within 4 years, it's sold across the world, 34 countries with annual sales of $1.5 billion. And then in 2003, it becomes the world's #1 spirit brand. Now, the thing to note about Smirnoff Ice is in some countries, it was real vodka with a lemon mix, a slightly carbonated lemon mixer. In other countries, such as the US, it was actually not vodka at all. It was what they call a fermented malt beverage, an FMB, which is a beer that's got all the flavor and color stripped out of it, and then flavor and color and effervescence added back in. And that was done in order to do 2 things, really. One, be able to be distributed wherever beer is distributed, because in countries like the US, there's very particular licensing laws. And the second was there was huge tax benefits for the business in actually selling a beer as opposed to a vodka, but it was dressed up to be like a vodka. And so there is some, hopefully you'll understand there's some latent problems in that. And so now there's a bunch of flavors on the market. Smirnoff Ice is big, but it's not a real vodka in the US. It's actually a beer, and consumers are cottoning onto that. And so when the team started to do their equity mapping on a strategic review, what are our target audience starting to think about Smirnoff? In the outer quadrants, we call this our brand health map. You might have used in the past brand essence wheels. You might have used brand onions in different models. This is our model. We call it the brand health map. And they started to get some really worrying attributes coming into the brand around confusing flavors, cheap, mainstream, embarrassed, comes out of a faucet, embarrasses me. And so that's a problem. But the team got onto it and said, you know what, we don't want that. We actually have a strategic brand health map, which we want to make sure that we start moving the brand more to align with where we want it to go, and actually change some of these attributes in consumers' hearts and minds. And this is a really important thought. If you don't know what your negatives are and what people, where people might have dissatisfaction, what people are really thinking and feeling, you can't do anything about it. And if you don't do anything about it, if some of those negatives get really close to the core of your brand, the brand DNA, which we, for Smirnoff is purity, Russianness, and originality, you could end up with a patient on an ICU table that could end up terminal. So you've really got to be careful. You've really got to be careful and make sure for positives and the negatives, the opportunity areas and the areas where you're strong, you've got to know them so that you can start really hands-on managing that brand through the activities that you do. So the brand team came in. They said, this is actually strategically our desired brand health map and where we want to go. And they did some activities a little like this. And hopefully you'll see that they want to pump up Russianness. They want to pump up refined. They want to pump up purity. So they want to start owning some of those core values. And they've highlighted those in green here in their health map to say, we actually want to start driving some attributes that are going to help us build positivity back into this brand. And this is just some examples of what they did.
Which premium vodka is as much a part of the perfect martini as the glass it comes in?
A little bit of sophistication, some premiumness.
Which premium vodka is filtered through charcoal, made from birch trees so rare they bear our name?
Filtering. And then last but not least,
which treasured Russian luxury was nearly lost forever in the Bolshevik Revolution?
starting to get back to provenance, Russianness, heritage. So they started to rebuild the reasons to believe and the foundations under the brand. And then luckily for them, in 2005, there was a writer, an editor for the New York Times that hated Smirnoff. And he set about a project where he was attempting to taste 20 vodkas blind and then write about what is the hands down winner. His assistant, as a joke, as a little bit of mischief, as it says here on the slide, threw Smirnoff in at the end. And I'll run the film.
In a blind tasting of 21 of the world's finest vodkas, which one did the New York Times declare their hands-down favorite? Clearly, Smirnoff. Please drink responsibly.
So the editor didn't know Smirnoff had been thrown in. It was a blind taste test, and he quite naturally chose Smirnoff. And to his credit, he wrote about it, and Smirnoff picked up on it, and there were billboards and ads and stuff running everywhere. And we ended up starting to see bottles of Smirnoff going into freezers in the place of Grey Goose. They did packaging. They did a packaging upgrade in that year in 2005, and you can see the evolution of the packaging. But you can see in the packaging upgrade, they actually retained the core iconography, the core semiotics, the eyebrow, the medals, the eagle, the hierarchy of communication on the pack. They did a really nice job, and they were selling for about $13 here. So still quite cheap, but actually they're starting to earn the right to push price. So that's when they started to see those attributes in their brand health map start to turn around. And it was a really, really nice time. 2006 to 2017, we're going to go through that journey super quickly. A new brand team comes in. They're under pressure to drive organic sales and distribution. The belief was that the really foundational work that had been done over the prior years would be enough to continue to drive the future success. And I say this, and I don't say it lightly, that they didn't really understand the core building blocks that the prior team had put in place, and Pandora's box was opened. The other phenomena that is worth mentioning here is, the premium end of the category was really flying, and so they were losing consumers up into that premium end with Grey Goose, Ciroc, Belvedere played out there. They were actually losing consumers going down, and so they were in a tough spot. It was a really tough spot. Just because you're in a tough spot, though, doesn't mean you should actually not know what your brand stands for, not know what its key proposition is, and ensure that all your activities are driving against that. They develop local communications. I'm going to run it, and I think you'll get the gist here.
It was only when I died that life got interesting. That's my brother, Morton. That's me. And this place is called Live On. They do some amazing things with carbon. See, you can take 2.5 pounds of human soot, and if you sift, you sluice, and you rinse, time after time after time, till you've dumped out all the nasties. Then you know what? You can turn Mr. Butt Ugly into a girl's best friend. Nice, huh?
They were going for the filtering angle there, but it didn't work. Actually, it was a concept that people couldn't quite relate to. They upgraded packaging again and pushed price to $16. The only point I want to make on this packaging is, if you look at it, they took a lot of the semiotics off. They actually changed the hierarchy of communication on the pack, and they lost a lot of the quality cues. And at the same time, they pushed price, thinking that they could push up into that more premium bracket, which is always a risk. I always say with price, make sure you deserve it. Make sure that from your consumer perspective, you've got a right to charge more, and they get it and they know why. They then introduced, there was no more fruit flavors left, so they introduced dessert flavors. So this one's a whipped cream caramel. There was a strawberry sorbet marshmallow flavored vodka. They went into sours with very iridescent colors, as you can see, and then they went into the adjacent cider category, which I don't know if a vodka brand with Russianness, purity, and originality at its core, I don't think it should be doing any of these things. But in a push to drive sales, the team really went for it, and they were under a lot of pressure to drive sales, and a lot of these things were off-brand. Sales actually didn't come, very, very flat to negative sales year on year. And actually, where the brand health map was starting to come good, they started to see these attributes come back in because they hadn't quite finished the job. And so it was really, really a problem time for the Smirnoff brand. And, people were saying, okay, how do we fix this? What have we got to do to Smirnoff in North America to actually get it back on track? And so of more recent times, I'm pleased to say, whilst the market kept moving, there's a new brand over here that entered called Tito's in the early 2000s. One flavour, an American vodka, one flavour, which is the original. In other words, no citrus, no dessert flavours, etc. Came into the marketplace and started to fill a void. The premium segment continued to drive that value growth. And actually, the strategic errors of the past, that may have just proved too costly for Smirnoff. But the team got onto it. They got onto it and they ran this spot. And this will hopefully give you some reminiscence of the history that I showed you earlier on Smirnoff, which feels like it's closer to brand. It feels like it's coming back into, the wheelhouse of Russianness, originality, and clarity. So quite a relevant way to speak about its originality and its Russianness, and starting to put some quality cues and some reasons to believe back under the foundation of the brand. They also started talking about awards. They started entering awards again and started talking about awards again to start to reinforce, as they should, the quality of the vodka. They redid the packaging and came back closer to the original getup with all those semiotics and all those cues back on, dates, medals, shields, eagles, crowns, and they got the pricing back to 13. Now, if you think about it, in 14 years, they haven't been able to move price, and that's a reflection of their lack of ability to grow equity, because that's value destroying in its own right. Unfortunately, though, the innovation train just kept running. And again, this is a result of pressure. So they're doing pink lemonade now, seltzers, margarita seltzers, cherry drop vodka, coloured vodkas. And again, the question I ask on reflection is, how are any of these nurturing and feeding that core DNA of this brand? I actually think they're vampiring, they're not feeding. And as a result, Tito's actually has taken the market lead here in the US. And once upon a time, it was Smirnoff, the number one spirit brand in the world. Tito's have taken the lead. Smirnoff struggles to deliver growth, and New Amsterdam vodka is it's a value play, but it's starting to put some pressure on Smirnoff. So it's a tale of many stories. But the key is, lack of a clear consumer-led brand building strategy, as hopefully you can see, led to brand drift, complexity of what they're trying to do, real loss of balance between growth and equity. They're really focusing on growth when actually getting the equity right helps make the growth easier. And I always say, make sure your growth drivers, your activities are on brand. You'll be doing both jobs brilliantly well. The equity impact on the brand has led to declining sales and a lot of reactive versus proactive decision making as a result. So the sort of key takeaways, folks, hopefully that was informative, and hopefully it was a story that you could follow. The key takeaways are: ensure that everyone in your organisation knows your brand positioning and the core DNA of your brand. Make sure everyone knows that, because everyone's got an accountability to help you as a brand manager deliver and nurture that equity. Ensure that everything you do and say is delivering your key brand benefit. You won't be positioned unless you do that, because consumers have got a whole lot more going on than your brand in their lives. So make sure that everything you do. And when I say everything, guys, like I'm obviously being very, 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 very absolute there. make sure that as much as you possibly can is on KBB, and stuff that, if it's not, make sure that it's neutral at best. And then just be vigilant in what I just said, and make sure that you just get that you can't get away with it. Every activity has the power to build brand when it's on equity. Likewise, every activity has the opportunity to actually destroy or vampire your brand's equity. I use Smirnoff as a case study, but you know, this case study applies across all categories, all industries, all service sectors. You cannot burn the furniture to keep the house warm. You might burn it for 1 or 2 seasons, but I promise you, there's no more left, and the house will actually be very cold. So please don't do that. Make sure that what you do is on brand. Many examples of brands that have done it. I'm not going to go through these in any detail, but, you know, Best Buy, a big electronics retailer here in the US, you know, decided to be true to themselves and stop fighting on price with Amazon and build in-store experience. They're now the world's biggest electronic retailer. Domino's got themselves in a whole lot of trouble, thinking that they were really a logistics company delivering hot pizza quick. They went back to food values and went back to great food, and they've delivered amazing results here in the US over recent years. And folks, you all know about IBM's reinvention of itself. I'm going to leave it there, and Vlad, I think I'm going to throw over to you now for any Q&A. The only thing I would say while Vlad's coming up, folks, is that we are planning on delivering a program sometime early next year, which, as Vlad said, will be quite an intense program on the full process of brand management. We've just given you one little taste. So if you're interested in that, please just get on that email list. There'll be a follow-up email coming out, you know, respond to that, because we'd love to see you there. We think we're going to build a really exciting program. So Vlad.
Thank you, Andy. That was a fantastic presentation, and there's some really thought-provoking frameworks and processes and examples shown throughout. And I think it's also great to see a continuous example throughout, so that we can see how some of these decisions and processes play out over time, and where they can be implemented really well, and other times where they're not implemented so well and lead to possible declines in brand equity. It really definitely helped to bring things to life. So yeah, not sure about everyone else in the audience, but that Smirnoff cremation ad creative really made me shudder when I saw that. I'd like to open up the floor to questions. So I've got a couple in the chat already. We've got about sort of 10 minutes or so, probably before people have to get back to work. And so I'll just relay them back to you. So the first question I've got here for you is, what strategies are most effective in maintaining or enhancing brand loyalty?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And the first thing is, strategically, what are you trying to achieve? And I just want to open that up just a little bit. You've only got about 4 strategic decisions when it comes to growing a brand. One is recruit new in, recruit new to category, premiumization, or frequency. So getting really clear first on your strategic option for growth is absolutely critical. And then once you've got that clear and you're bringing consumers in, 3 key points that I'll leave people with. 1, understand your consumer in life and in reaction and in relationship to the category, and ensure you know what they're looking for, and ensure you know what you can give them. Once you know what you can give them, I call that the key brand benefit. Be crystal clear on what that is and deliver it every single time you talk to, touch, or interact with that consumer. That consistency of delivery, from product quality right through to how you show up, is super important in delivering consumer loyalty. That's the second thing. Then the third thing is, listen to your consumers. Really stay in touch with your consumers and be really, really honest with yourself about what they're thinking about your brand. Sometimes we don't want to believe it. Sometimes we're like, how can they think that? Take that on board. Do your social listening. Really understand the widely held beliefs and thoughts about your brand that can enhance your brand loyalty or might be starting to get in the way of your brand loyalty. And once you're honest with yourself, and if there's things that are getting in the way, do something about them. Be honest and do something about them. And the things that are actually increasing loyalty, do more of those. Be really clear what they are and go really hard against them.
Yeah, fantastic. And of course, we know from different kind of ends of the market, from premium to kind of value ends of the market, you don't always have to resort to price discounting and loyalty programs in per se,
right,
to be able to foster loyalty.
Yep.
The other question we have for you here is, what metrics should be used to measure brand success, and how do you think these have evolved?
Yeah, so I think they're continually evolving, and it's really hard to answer that with a specific, because it depends on the category you're in. So let me use spirits. Let's continue on the spirits category just for a second. There are some what I call category wide attributes, metrics that are really important for the spirits category. Things like a brand that's becoming more popular nowadays. A brand that is hot on social media. That's a great example. That didn't exist years ago, but actually brands that are starting to trend and get hot on social media in the spirits category, there's usually something in that, which means that, people are starting to talk and recommend it to each other. A brand that I would recommend is another one for the spirits category. When I say I would recommend, why is that important? In the spirits category, you want people like mixologists and bartenders who are gatekeepers. Actually, when people come up and say, hey, not sure what I want to drink, what would you say? I'll have a Smirnoff lime and soda. That's what I'd have if I were you. Or I'd have an espresso martini on Smirnoff. So that recommendation for the spirits category, very, very important metric. So there's usually half a dozen or so category metrics, and I just gave you some examples out of the spirits category. Then importantly, you need to know what your brand metrics need to be inside the category. So if Smirnoff is all about my social best, you'll want a metric that somehow talks to, Smirnoff helps me be at my best when I'm out. If you've got a brand that's about premiumness, Vlad, to your point earlier, luxury, it's a brand worth paying a little bit more for. You want that metric starting to pop and starting to really come forward for you. So a couple of metrics around your key brand proposition that actually is what your consumers are emotionally buying into. And then usually a couple of metrics around some functional quality, pricing, availability, So Grey Goose, great example, is a brand I can only find in the best nightclubs. If all of a sudden Grey Goose is available in the local bars and sort of the second tier nightclubs, it's probably not in the right places and probably not going to be driving those attributes that you want to be driving.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, as you're talking there, I can see the alignment between, the brand health maps and the brand positioning maps that you were sort of showing earlier, and how that ties into some of those metrics that are specific to your brand as well as the category that you're in.
Yep. Yeah. And Vlad, the only other thing I'd add, so Russianness, at a time, and will be again, very important for Smirnoff. However, given where we are in the world at the moment, they probably want to lean in on originality and purity and probably just dial down Russianness a little bit. And that's okay, as long as you know what you're doing and you're managing the brand appropriately, But at some point, again, that authenticity will probably become relevant again, and you'll want to make sure that you're starting to see that dial up in your metrics again.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I think we're almost out of time. So that pretty much wraps up our first ever CXI Masterclass. We're going to be announcing our next Masterclass date and topic in the next couple of weeks, so please stay tuned for that. I'd like to say thank you again to Andy Gibson from The Edge and his team for putting together this amazing keynote presentation for this session. And thank you all for joining us. Hopefully we've managed to pique your interest slightly today, and we look forward to seeing all of you at the next CXI Masterclass. Bye for now.